Hello everybody. In this video we're going to talk about some of the home purchase expenses and closing costs and some of the fees that are involved in that. So just giving you a little bit more details on some of the things that you're going to end up having to spend money on in the involved pretty much in the whole process of purchasing the home. Obviously, number one, the most important thing is the purchase price. This is something that obviously you want to negotiate with the seller to get it under contract, and it's probably the most important thing out of everything. Secondly, is your down payment. So, depending on what type of loan that you might have, some people get VA, some people have FHA, some people have conventionals. Some people are, down payments can range between 3 and 20%. Now, this isn't to scare anybody off. Typically, if you're somebody who has an FHA loan, or a conventional loan, you might be putting between 3 and 5% down. VA is a 0% down payment program, so that's a little bit different. But your down payment may vary. This is also something that having a lender that's going to communicate with you. This is something that's going to be vital in like understanding and going over with them. And they're probably going to be the person that will be the first to break things down to you when it comes down to, what is needed for your down payment. Three are the mortgage loan fees. So, these are things like, your origination fee, which is something that, the lender charges for pretty much processing the loan. You also have something called appraisal fees, that's something that you're going to pay pretty much in the middle of being under contract or while being under contract at some point. In my experience, I've had buyers had to pay, between maybe $400, $600 for something like this. There's a professional that comes out there and does that while the property is under contract. So that is something that you should prepare yourself to be able to do if you have, any type of financing that's going to be involved in your purchase. The credit report fee is another one. Lenders do pull your credit. This is not something that they're able to do for free, so they do charge you for that. And generally, it's not a large amount, but it is a fee nonetheless. And lastly, for mortgage loan fees, you have your underwriting fee. So they have a job that they have to do to determine credit worthiness and make sure that you're actually eligible for the loan. So they're working behind closed doors to make sure that you get the loan. And not only do you get the loan, but, the loan sticks, for lack of a better word. So this is another fee that, ends up being paid, and it's a part of your closing costs as well. Number four, we're going to go into more details on the closing costs. This is a little bit, this is a list of different fees, and this is something that you'll get an invoice for at some point in time as well for some of these fees, whether they're all included or you might get one separate. For example, title insurance, they have a job to make sure that there aren't any disputes of ownership while you're under contract. So it keeps, the deal from pretty much falling apart, to say the least. Escrow fees, they have fees as well. Fees for recording, the transfer of ownership with the county. That's something that also has to be paid. You have transfer taxes for transferring ownership of the property. You have homeowners insurance, which is something that you should be looking at while you're under contract as well. Property taxes. This is something that's pretty common. You might not have to pay. You might only have to pay a certain amount of property taxes for that particular year that you bought the home, and that's something that could be prorated. And that's something that, you'll work out with somebody. It's a case-by-case basis. I don't want to give you any numbers on how much that might be. But you can also kind of look in public records and kind of get an idea of what, the previous owner paid in taxes to give you an idea of what you might end up paying in the future. So that's something that I always kind of put out there for some of my home buying clients. The next one is attorney fees. Not every transaction is going to involve an attorney. That's a case-by-case basis type of situation. So you may have that type of fee involved in the transaction of your home, or you may not. Home inspection fees. This is something that's not mandatory. I recommend everybody get a home inspection unless you're somebody that's a flipper. I know I've mentioned that before, but that's something that, it's just very important. Pest inspection fees. is another one. Usually this is something that can be done along with the home inspection as well. So for example, like if you get a termite inspection, you might have the inspector, he might be capable of doing that job as well. Sometimes you might have to have somebody else come out there and, maybe fumigate the house or, do some type of, remedy for like any type of pest that might be in the house. For example, like I mentioned, termites. Lastly, survey fees. This is another thing that, for example, if you're purchasing a home that includes a large portion of land, you might run into a situation where you need to get, the land or the parcel surveyed for whatever reason. So, there are fees for stuff like that for them to verify, boundaries and dimensions of the property that's, pretty much being under contract at that point. And also any courier or express fees, things being delivered or, documents being, driven to somebody, that's another thing that doesn't always happen, but these are, that's just another fee that's possible. This is just, it's all part of the game of, purchasing a home. Number 5, prepaid expenses, property taxes. That's something that, they'll take care of in advance. Funds placed in escrow for future tax payments. So again, that's in advance. Homeowners insurance. A portion of your annual premium is usually collected up front. Your mortgage interest, partial interest for, from the point of when the home closes to the point to where you make your first payment on the note of the home. Once you actually, receive ownership of the home, that's, mortgage interest. And this is something that will all be documented. You'll have, something, basically you'll have something in writing to be able to go over when it comes down to that. Number 6, private mortgage insurance. If you haven't heard of this term, if you've ever heard of something called PMI, that's just, an abbreviation for it. That's pretty much the same thing. If you're in a situation where you're putting less than 20% down on a home that you're looking to purchase, you may need to pay this. This not, I'm not saying you have to, but it's a possibility that, your lender might tell you this is going to be something that's going to be involved in your loan. It protects the lender in case of default. PMI usually, I can't give you a set amount on what that would be, but the lender would be able to give you that once the home is under contract, and they can give you specific figures on that. Number 7, homeowners association fees. Here in Arizona, we have a large portion of the homes out here that have HOAs. They're in HOA communities. So, these HOAs provide different things like, maintenance for the common area, landscaping for the community, especially if it's like a gated community. Any type of maintenance to like, exterior features of the community. For example, if it's a gated community of condos, sometimes the HOA will cover, things that are outside of the home or like things that are on the roof, for example. Other maintenance things like, taking care of, different community amenities like cleaning up the parks, making sure if there's a community pool, making sure stuff like that is up to, standard and it's actually usable. So, that's just something that they charge. This fee can vary. I've seen some HOAs be maybe $50 a month. I've seen some HOAs $300 a month. I've seen some HOAs that are $600-$700 a month. It varies. This is something that if you're purchasing a home, if you're working with a realtor, they can kind of verify that for you, what that amount is. Sometimes this is something that can be an annual fee. Sometimes it can be monthly. Sometimes it can be a fee that they only ask you to pay every 6 months, which is, biannually. So, this is just something that you want to do research on. You'll know this before you actually get the home under contract, and you'll have all the details on that before you even get to the point to where you're purchasing the home. So, just keep that in mind. That is something that you can run into, but not all homes have them. Lastly, number 8, your moving expenses. As we get older, most people are not going to hire a bunch of their friends to move all of their stuff. If you're moving from out of state, you might have to hire a mover. You might have to rent a truck. You might have extra supplies that you need. Factor all of that in because that's all, that might not be something that is required by a lender, but that's an additional expense on your end that you'll have to be responsible for. So again, keep that in mind. So we went over a few different, tidbits on, different expenses on closing costs and other fees that you might run into while purchasing a home. You should have a basic understanding of what to expect. Some of these figures, they're going to vary. That's why I don't really get into too many details on the numbers that you might have to pay. Closing costs in general can be between 2 and 5%. So, just take 2 and 5% of whatever the purchase price is, and just that'll give you a ballpark figure of what you might be getting into. Again, your lender will be able to give you an exact figure. So they're going to be the best person to speak to in regards of what is actually going to be owed at the end of the day. But yeah, I will always say 2 to 5% of the purchase price is a good rule of thumb with stuff like this. We'll go over in another video how some of this can be kind of covered by some type of concession that might be needed in the transaction. Not everybody needs something like this, but we'll go over that another time. But this is it for your closing cost expenses.